it's so good to be with you, all of you, and it's really an honor to, not even speak about the topic that it's close to my heart, but what I enjoy is very much having discussion with other people about the topic of inclusion, because I think we are on an incredible journey worldwide on creating diverse and inclusive organizations, but the conversations are very often on one level, and it's so nice to have various perspectives in order to create more inclusive organizations. I am super excited to share with you my heart and my research and my work behind what I called radical inclusion. But I'm also I want to tell you that this is not coming from a place of frustration or seeing that what we are doing right now in the world is wrong. Not at all. I think when we talk about change and we talk about that radical movement of change, it's very often because we see that something else is possible, something else is there, and something else there might be better for organizations. And I think that's where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place where I'm observing a lot. I see what we do in research. I see what we do in organizations, and I'm just putting my thoughts out there. And I'm actually really curious to hear from you and get your perspectives and on your opinions. And therefore, I'm not going to talk too much, but I want to have a dialogue with you and get your perspective and your questions on this. So just a little bit about me before I talk. My name is Patrycja. Last name Riera. So I'm originally from Poland, but lived quite for many years in Denmark and married a Panamanian. We've lived in a few places around the world, but now we are based in Dubai, where we both work and have a base as a family. I run an organization called Inclusionem, which is Latin for inclusion, and we help organizations to create felt and measurable experience of inclusion. And there's a lot of data gathering that we do for organizations, analysis to build a strategy, but also behavioral shifts. Apart from that, I am a DBA candidate at the IE Business School in Madrid, and I am a professor there, teaching diversity, inclusion, and inclusive leadership subjects. So what I'm talking to you about right now, it's my everyday work, and something that I'm extremely passionate about. And I hope it will land with you, and you will learn something from it as well as I am learning every day. So why did I call it radical inclusion? Yeah. And I think, I had some time with my team last year where we talk about where we want to go, what we want to do more of with clients, in 2023 and even farther in the future. And I remember just standing in front of my team and going, you know what, I really think that there's more change, radical change needed in organization in order to build organizations that are fit for humans and fit for the future, where human is really the center. Yeah. And as I said that word radical, what I've realized is that whatever we are doing right now, it's very much related to compliance, to the change that happens because we are talking about it, or because laws and regulations are needed, or because it's a trend right now in the world to say we're working, and we're a diverse and inclusive organization. And it's all good. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's all good. But we are not changing fast enough. We specifically when it comes to gender inclusion, and that's where I sit quite a lot in. We see a lot of women being added to organizations, but we also see them leaving, and we don't see that progression happening fast enough, especially in the senior positions. If we have women in senior positions, very often they are holding supportive roles and not the decision-making roles. And the research tells us this. If we look at the research that's been done actually analyzing the Fortune 500 companies in the past 30 years, we see that there are more and more women, but they're not always in the decision-making positions. They're more likely to hold supportive roles. And so I just sat down and I thought about, okay, what does it mean to create radically inclusive organizations where human is really at the center? And when I talk about radical inclusion or radical organizations and inclusion as such, I'm talking about healthy and mature organizations that work with inclusion and work with adding diversity and being more diverse in a sustainable way. Because if we know very well that if we change something quickly, very often it doesn't really have that sustainable impact. And what we've seen is that, adding that diversity doesn't always produce inclusion. And so even though we are more and more diverse and we are adding more diversity, we are having more and more challenges in organizations with that, because simply we're not focusing on inclusion enough. And so when we think about, what is the magic to make organization more inclusive, I think that change needs to happen not top down from compliance point of view, but bottom up, when we create a movement where people in the organization are motivated to start something and to see that change happening quicker. And one of the things that I've seen why we need more of that change, and why is it not working right now, is because every conversation we have around inclusion is very much with HR, because it's a people-centered topic. But if we think about inclusion in a holistic way, starting from organizational design, looking into profit and performance, and even if you look right now about the requirements from organizations to report on diversity and inclusion from an ESG point of view, then inclusion and measuring inclusion and working with inclusion is actually an investment responsibility as well. And so it cannot be just HR. It needs to be the whole organization that actually really works through it. So, why are we getting it wrong? And what are we seeing that makes us think we are getting it wrong? Yeah. So we are still very much doing focused, where, the intent is very much, helping people to do more and do better in the organizations. And we're not focusing actually enough to help people to be more of inclusive, more of mature, more of healthy leaders in organization. As I mentioned to you, we're looking at it from a HR point of view, and then we need to start looking at it from investment structure processes point of view. And I think, looking at the latest research on inclusion, but also looking at our conversations with clients, and we work with quite a lot of banks on developing some solutions for inclusion, for reporting inclusion. And the conversations we are having with our departments in that world is that they see that organizations are not afraid to report on some diversity data, or what kind of solutions, initiatives they are running towards diversity, but there's no data. And there's no vulnerable and very honest feedback and data to show where are we in terms of inclusion in the organization, and what are we doing to actually change that. And and if you think about inclusion, that's culture, that's organizational DNA. The definition of inclusion is a human in the organization, one, feels that they belong. There's a sense of community, and two, that they are valued for who they are, not for what they do specifically, not the analysis they produce and the PowerPoints that they create, but for who they are as a human being. And so we do not see that kind of data in reporting, because we are so used to the very, I don't want to call it hard, but the typical data that would explain what companies are doing rather than why they're doing it, and what is the human aspect of it on the investments on the organization. I mentioned to you, there's this top-down compliance rather than bottom-up, everybody involved, and we treat it very much as a change that needs to happen now, rather than something that needs to happen in the long term to create a sustainable change. I think Gallup did last year, or the year before, the results of Gallup engagement survey worldwide shows that people at work are 21% people worldwide are engaged at work. And by engaged, we mean they show up, they enjoy the work, they're contributing with everything they have, with their best selves. Yeah. And that is data also related to strengths. How much of your time are you actually at work using your strengths and your uniqueness? 21%, which means organizations have 79% of people that are not engaged, that are not showing up every day with their best who they are. And the only way to change it is to create really radically a culture that allows it to happen, change our processes, change the way we look at a human being, change the way we design job descriptions, change the way we develop people and upskill people, and allow them to really, look at them and go and start with them, start with humans, start with the uniqueness of a human to solve the problems or the challenges that organizations are facing. I think another problem that is very important, and it's something that is visible also from the gender inclusion point of view, is that we actually promote people for wrong traits. If you look at the talent development or the pipeline development of future leaders, we very often promote people because they're charismatic, they're very engaged from a communication point of view, or deliver quite high profit or high delivers on their KPIs. But we very often forget that the best leaders actually know those leaders that are very chatty or charismatic or always deliver the best from a KPI point of view. But the people that actually post empathy, humility, courage, are not afraid of tough conversations. Their ego is in place. And we do not promote those people. I mean, you've seen it probably in your organization or the organizations that you work with, that very often people wonder why this person is in that position. And so I think there's so much shift on in the mindset, in the biases that we have in organizations that stop us very often from getting the right people into the positions that they're in. So what do we need? I mean, this conference is all about teal. This conference is all about, how do we get people to give their best selves? How do we get organizations to really use the human potential in the best possible way? I'm a specialist when it comes to behavior and inclusive leadership, and that's what I can talk about for 4 hours. But I think when I'm looking at the organizations right now, what I'm realizing is that we need to change the way that we design organizations. They need to be flat. They need to be more project oriented rather than functionally oriented, because functions create hierarchy and bureaucracy, and the flat organizations, flat structure allows people to collaborate and take decisions together. I think we need to understand that in order for us to create inclusive organizations, we need to use data to understand where we are, when we want to go, because very often the shift needs to be 180 degrees. And if organizations don't have data, they don't have facts-driven conversations, and conversations that will or strategies that will be really based on not what somebody in the top wants, but what are the people from the bottom up that want to be part of? What is the change they want to see? How do we want to engage our employees in that change that's going to happen? One of the things that I struggle with quite a lot, and I'm just very honest with you, we love living in Dubai, but the whole hierarchy of the culture of the Middle East and some parts of Africa, and not allowing people to take decisions, that's something it's extremely visible here and very much stops inclusive culture. Why is that? Because decision making is one of the key variables and one of the key behaviors that allows people to feel that they're included in organization. And that's why, when we talk about change, not top down but bottom up, it's because we want people to be able to take decisions. We want people to be able to design it. We want people to be able to buy in to the change and create that shift, create that movement that will mobilize most of the organization, the whole organization, to actually change. And so, even starting from strategy point of view, I mean, what we want to do, how we want to do it, what are the priorities, both internal and external, in terms of strategy, but also partnership with organizations that we're working with. And from people point of view, the hiring decisions, alignment on roles and deciding ourselves how we want to work together to actually create the best collaboration on this team or in this department, or or within relationships within people. And I do think that we need to see the change that needs to happen more as a movement rather than additional new structure or a new system that is being implemented in the organization. It hasn't been working because it's been top down, and we see it everywhere. I mean, 70% of all change programs fail because it's very much top down rather than bottom up. And what we don't see is the change happening quickly. We see that the change is very slow, that the change is very much one-sided rather than look at it from a holistic point of view. And it's not, as I said, it's not fast enough. I also think that what we need is to develop a different type of leaders, because we need different type of leaders to make that change happen quickly, but also the next generation needs different type of leaders. It's not only about the skills, it's not only about the experience, but it's actually very much about the character. And, the type of leaders that we want to create is people that are great mentors, that are great coaches. They are all for us as a team and not selfish about what they want to achieve. And we want to develop, and we want to look for people that are looking very much future, and have a compelling point of view to shape the world and how they want to create opportunities for organizations to create that impact and change in the world. I listened to a great CEO actually from Denmark. I think he's called Mads Nipper. He's a CEO of a Danish energy group called Ørsted, and he said something that was very, very interesting. He said organizations in the current world need to start looking at what they're doing as what are their current world problems that we want to help to resolve, that we want to change. And the purpose, being purpose driven, is something that really captures people's hearts, especially the next generation that's coming in. We need to create organizations as communities, not as families, but as communities of people that are driven with the same purpose, the same goal, even though we are different, because there's so much that we have in common towards where we are going, that we are able to create that alignment, and we're able to figure out how we want to work together to make it happen. I've been thinking and discussing with some of my colleagues and professors at IE if are we able to do this now? Are we able, my generation, I'm 40, are we able to make that change happen now and make it visible? And as I'm looking at the state of the conversation worldwide, as I'm looking at how we're looking at inclusion very much from I'm right, you're wrong, I don't know if this is going to happen now. I think there is the next generation, Gen Zs specifically, who are so focused on creating that impact in the world, and are so aligned on we want to have communities in the world that respects each other, no matter what the differences are. And we do have it right now as well in our world, but we are used to an old way of working. We are used to, we have leaders in place right now that are not thinking with the mindset that we want to see in order to create more of that future-ready organizations. So whenever I look at my students, I'm thinking this is the next generation that create an impact that we can't, simply because we don't have enough people to believe that movement. We have enough people to create that movement, but there's not enough people that believe that the movement can happen bottom up rather than top down. Because what happens when it's top down is very much compliance. When it's bottom up, it's very much engagement, and that's where the magic really happens. So concluding, because I really want to just give space for questions and for us, sharing our perspectives on this. My dream actually, and the conversations I'm having with clients specifically is, one, how can you change the design of your organization to really to put that human in the center? And whatever challenges you're facing, whatever you want to achieve, you don't focus on the problem, you don't focus on the product first, but you focus on your human and go, what's in that human? What is it in you that's so special, so unique, that we can use to create that product, that we can use to create that change? Start with human, because when we start with human, unbelievable things can happen. It is ambition and it's hard, because we have to shift completely the way we're thinking, the way we design processes, the way we strategize. But if we start with human and that potential, that capacity, and that energy that human have when they're in their strengths, when they believe in something, that is magic. Another thing that we are really, I don't want to say pushing, but we're trying to teach our clients and organizations as much as possible, is that you cannot develop and grow your people only looking at skills and teaching them about leadership styles or what skills, what qualities they need to possess. You have to focus on the basic thing that makes human being a great leader, which is a character. Because at the end of the day, it starts with who we are. And so we are very much in a conversation and trying to through workshops, through coaching, through anything that we do, look at a human and go, okay, where are you when it comes to humility? Where are you when it comes to courage? Where are you when it comes to empathy, respect, curiosity, and all the other basic character qualities that make you unbelievable and will make you inclusive? Because at the end of the day, if somebody's faking it, everybody can feel it. So when we help to develop incredible leaders because of their character, the change that we see in organization is more transformational than transactional. It's not easy, because how do you measure humility? How do you measure curiosity? How do you measure courage, right? And we want to measure whatever we're teaching our people. We want to see that it has a direct impact on the organization. But I think this is the whole point of the shift that we see in conversations in organizations right now. And this conference is about that. What worked in the past does not work right now, and we need to start having different conversations around how do we make sure that organizations are really fit for humans and fit for the future, because we don't know what the future holds. The only thing we know is that when people are strong and confident and work well together, they can face whatever challenges the world has, whatever challenges the organization has. And so that's what I believe radical inclusion really is: human-centric character that is not about me, but about us, and a design of organization that allows that human to be at the center. And I am going to stop now. As you can hear, I could talk. And I can see that there are some great questions in the chat, and unfortunately, I can't see it even with my glasses. So maybe, Emma,
don't worry, maybe Patrycja.
You've seen it. Yep. Shoot it at me.
So wonderful. Where do we start? What a fabulous talk from you, Patrycja. What's just jumped out at me: when we start with human, something magical happens. And I know, scrolling through the audience, that there are a lot of people in there that is going to be really resonating with. So I just invite you to take a breath, and I'll just review some of the comments, and then we'll move over to the Mentimeter, because we've got a slew of questions in Menti. I just want to acknowledge, that people have been dropping some comments in. Very relevant point for Marcin, saying, from my observation, the reason why 79% of people are not engaged is because organizations are more focused on current skills and experience rather than values, the inner why, and the natural talents, which I think, you've just covered with, let's start with the human, let's start with the purpose. It's about the people and the why, not the product. And Martin's also following up on, the Toyota example of planning those years and years and years in advance for those skills that we need, which I think you touched on as well with the work that you're doing in looking at how do we bring leaders out that are different from what we've already, always seen. I'm going to come back to you, Martin. I'm going to just pop over to the mentee, because there's a couple of questions. Well, there's a lot of questions there. But I want to start with a question about the difference between community and family. So we have a question here that says, you talk about communities rather than families. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I'm just writing down as well to make sure that I cover everything. So why I say communities and not families, and why I anyhow say communities, that organizations need to be as communities. There's a brilliant research and article written by a guy called Henry Mintzberg, who's done a lot of strategy work. And he actually wrote a paper on how organization post the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, the organizations that survived and got stronger out of it, were organizations that really focused on creating community. And that purpose was the center of it. People were the center of it, and doing things together, creating that change and working to, I don't want to call it survive, but thrive, was in the tough times, was because they all got together and had a common value, common purpose, and common belief that they can make it happen. And I remember reading this article, and I was thinking, there was a point where he talked about how everybody was different. There was people from different parts of the world, different skills, different values, different religions, different beliefs, and there was no conversation during the time as they worked, through the time of financial crisis, on what's dividing them, on what's different about them. And I love the fact that when we believe in something and when we want to see a specific change happen, we actually don't care about what's different about us. We would rather focus on what helps us to achieve the goal that we want to achieve. It's almost like we need to be sometimes in crisis to see how well we can work together. And COVID was a perfect example of that, right? Yeah. But why am I saying we should not be looking at organizations as families, but communities, is because you do not choose a family. You're born into a family, and it's not like you leave family and go to another family. And the thing about communities and think about us being in organizations, that there are different seasons of us, our career growth, or what we need from organizations and what we want to learn. And our purpose and our values don't change as much as purpose. I think when we have strong values and our identity is founded on specific values, they don't shift that much. But our purpose, what's important, the goals we have, shapes really where we want to be and how we want to work as well. And so this is why I think we need to look at it more as communities, because we need to be aligned on the purpose and the values, rather than being stuck with people and living with people for the rest of your life in that context, right? And I think there's nothing wrong about leaving one community to go to another, depending on what the season of life you're in. I mean, organizations might need you for a specific period of time as a consultant, and then you enter another one. But your values, your purpose drives the decisions. And so this is basically my explanation. You do not choose a family, you're born into it. With communities, you can choose to which community you want to belong. Do they give you the sense of belonging? Do they value who you are? Or do you need to find it somewhere else? Does it make sense?
Makes beautiful sense. And I'm guessing that based on that as well, that you can belong to more than one community.
Yeah, very much. I mean, if I think of the organizations we work with, we very much choose our clients depending on what values they live out and what is their purpose, and we say, and how they want to work with us as well. I mean, that's, you recognize an organization if it's a mature and sustainable organization, a human-centric organization, when you see how they want to work with you. And when we see that the process is very transactional, it's just about another training or another data gathering or whatever it is, we actually very often don't go into those relationships, but rather focus on where can we create the greatest impact to support that purpose, to support that mission. And so you don't have to be in the corporate role. You can use that kind of compass as a consultant.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to come back to that because we have got some more questions around sort of examples of success and where you've not been quite so successful. And I just want to acknowledge, people are saying as well, another word that we're using a lot alongside communities is tribes, maybe a little stronger. But I just want to move away a little bit from that human side, because one of the questions that's popped up here in the Mentee is, how is technology changing the landscape? What about AI? And to what degree do you include artificial intelligence? How does that influence being human decision makers and contributors? And how does that affect the culture? Lots of questions in there.
So you know what, and I'm going to be very honest, I actually don't think I have the right answer to it. And I don't even spend enough time reflecting about it. What I can tell you that I've been thinking a lot about and actually started reading a little bit more about is, how do we help humans to still be unique and show that uniqueness and shine with that uniqueness in the face of technology? And so I think this is something that each one of us needs to also take on board as, how can I use the technology to still show the strengths, the passions, the qualities that I have that nobody else has? But I have to tell you, I think technology is amazing. I think AI is amazing. The whole ChatGPT is, as somebody who is a researcher and a content creator, I have ethical problem with it, but I can understand how it's helping quite a lot of people around the world, right? And so I think from an ethical point of view, we need to understand that technology is here to stay, and technology is helping us, and it's helping us to also work quite flexibly, which is amazing because we want that in inclusive world. But I also think we have to find not even a balance, but maybe set boundaries of, what's ethically okay, what's not. And each one of us needs to take on this self-reflective part of, how can I use technology to help me to be more of who I am? I don't know enough about that to give you a broad answer.
Okay, great answer though. Great answer. AI and where does it sit with that humanity? Another question here is, so what are the key principles that you follow or that you rely upon to develop that inclusive culture?
Oh, it's a brilliant question. So I will answer you this question with how we approach it with a client, and how we normally start working with a client or help clients on their journeys. We actually, we actually first start with, what are you dreaming for? What do you want to be as an organization? What do you see as possible? And then we help them to gather data. And it's data related not just to diversity, because that's easy. They probably have quite a lot of it in organizations, but we actually look at inclusion, and we help them to assess where they are on the variables that create inclusive culture and inclusive leadership. And very often psychological safety is measured as well. And so these are kind of the three things we look at. Why are we looking at leadership and psychological safety as part of the culture? Because as much as the top management is the one that sets the dream and and gives the direction to most of the time to organization. The middle managers are the ones that really have their hands dirty working with people. And so we want to, when we look at inclusive culture, we also look at where are you as leaders in terms of inclusive leadership behaviors, and what is the psychological safety of organization, because otherwise, you know, the DNA of the organization is incredibly important to make sure that people work collaboratively, that there's innovation, and there's high engagement and performance. So that's where we start, and from there we look, you know, we give recommendations. We see what are the most important things to work on and help to build a strategy, and different type of initiatives in the organization that support creating that inclusive culture. When you look at inclusive culture and what it really is, so you need to look at it from, again, coming back to the definition of what inclusion is, right? It is creating a sense of belonging for people. So people feel that when they come to their work, or they are with their colleagues, with their team, they feel that this is a place where they are valued, that they are not judged, that they can say whatever they want to say. And by say whatever they want to say, I'm not talking about that non-filter. I'm talking about share their perspectives, share their opinions, share ideas without feeling like, can I say it? Will people judge me? Will people think it's weird? It's a place where there's equality and fairness, where I know that my team has the best interest for me, and I have the best interest for them, where the competition is not, it's about being better than you and showing that I'm better than you, but rather competition to together make something that is impactful for the organization. And then on the other side, there is the valuing individual for who they are. It's not valuing for how incredible you are at creating analysis of data into the management PowerPoint, but it's about, you know, who are you as a human being? What is the impact that you create on me as an individual, as a leader, on the team, larger organization, and appreciating those people, appreciating the value they bring, not specifically with the task, but how they're doing things, how they impact. You know, I appreciate positivity in somebody, because when we are in a situation, hard situation, and we don't know how to crack the data or how to develop something, and we are under pressure, that this person looks at it with positive eyes, with words of encouragement for others. You know, there's different things that we have as human beings that are not seen, that are under the surface, that we don't actually talk about. And that's what makes us unique. I mean, a lot of people can make great analysis in PowerPoint, but you are different. You are unique because there is, you know, specific qualities of your character, of your personality, or your passions that make you of who you are, and there's nobody else like you. And I think we need to learn how to get more of that out of people that we're leading, rather than just generally job description type of impact. So you know, doing these two things, really creating that space that people feel they can be themselves, and valuing those people for who they are, appreciating everything they are and they do, is what you want to see in the culture. And that's what we are trying to help them. And so how does that look like practically? Anything from creating a kindness campaign, you know, or right now we are working on anti-discrimination and harassment campaign, because that was one of the challenges in one of the regions for the organizations that we work with, that it's not about what's wrong with you, but rather, hey, this is who we want to be as an organization. This is how we don't want to speak to each other, because this is the impact that it has on others. So shifting the language to create more of that unity rather than division. Yeah.
Thanks, Patrycja. I think you've just answered another question as well, because we had a question about what does radical change look like and how do you know when it's effective? And I think you've just told us that. I really want to point out as well that there's quite a conversation going on in the chat around this terminology of community versus tribe. We've got an example of GPT being used to answer that question. And some looking at, well, if we're a community, are we excluding people who aren't in our community? Which I think is quite an interesting question. And I just wonder what that sparks in you. If we say
repeat it again for me. Can you repeat the question again for me?
If we say we belong to a community, and as a community we are inclusive, are we then by default excluding people who aren't in our community?
This is such a good question. People, I love your questions. I wish we could be in the same room and just have this really awesome discussion together. You know what? It's actually really interesting. I've spent some time a few weeks back thinking about conformists and non-conformists, and what I mean by that. I think we live in a world that, because of that quick information flow and technology, and we're having conversations around the world that we didn't even have 10 or 15 years ago. I think because of that and accessibility to this information, we are creating language and definitions, I guess, that allows people to describe their identity and who they are and who they want to be, or what kind of organizations they want to work with. And on one hand, I love that. I love that we live in a world that moves forward and creates more of those opportunities for people to describe how they feel and who they are and where do they want to belong. Now, I think the challenge with that is, and this is why I very often tell organizations and try to live it myself as much as possible, is that if you are not curious and if you are not cautious and intentional about being with people that have different perspectives and different opinions and different values, you end up being in your own little community, as you said. And this is why curiosity and openness is so important, because if you identify yourself with this group and you feel like you belong in this group, it's a very small group. What about the rest? What about, you can belong with somebody even though there are specific differences that you might disagree on, but there's so much that you can learn from that person. There's so much this person can add to you, this other community can add to you. And I really think that and this is why I told you at the beginning, there is a shift in the world, but I don't know if it's going in a good direction, because we're really creating these tribes that don't know how to talk to each other and collaborate together and have, courageous actually conversations together, and I think this is why I say courage is extremely important, because we all have different belief systems. We all have different values, and we are never, ever going to agree on everything. And if we think that inclusion is agreeing, then we are very much wrong about that. It's about understanding how to build relationships and connections and learn from each other, even though we are different. How can you have a conversation with me, even though my religion is this and your religion is that, and it's so opposite, but there are things that make us, there are things, the qualities that we have the same, and there are probably interests or questions that we all have. And it's really about creating more of that curiosity in people, in those tribes, and having that openness, rather than saying this is it and this is the only thing that I want to be part of. Yeah.
So looking at that bigger picture, we're all part of the same tribe, but there are sub-tribes within those tribes, which we're all welcome to be included in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions in Menti here about the how. Patrycja, how do you do this? How do you value people? How do you bring about this change? And also, very interestingly, a lot of people have asked, does this start as a top-down or a bottom-up initiative?
Yeah, I think so. If I think about specifically one client that we work with, where the change really happens bottom up, not top down, and we've encouraged them to do that more bottom up rather than top down. There were conversations on the top about how to create that movement of change, but those people, they are driving it from, communicating about the importance of it. But the people in the bottom were the people that decided how they want to work through it, what they want to do about it, what kind of change they want to see. Yeah. And I think that this is the beauty of gathering data in their organization and specifically asking people, what do they think? What do they feel? Because when you get their perception, you understand what they actually need from the organization. Otherwise, you're doing something that they might actually not need to be, to feel included. Example, we ran a global D&I survey for a company, for a global company, more than 500,000 people. We did it for one business unit, so it wasn't that many people, it was only 40,000 people. But we asked, at the end of the survey, we asked an open question. What does inclusion mean to you? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you would be surprised to see how the answers were different in Europe, in North mm-hmm. America, in Latin America, in Asia, in the Middle East, and in Africa. I couldn't almost believe the difference of what people want and they need in order to feel included. Yeah. So mm-hmm. giving you an example, Europe, very much about equality and fairness. And to be honest with you, most of our research on inclusion comes from the Western organizations. So of course, that's what we talk about mostly when it comes to inclusion, right? But then you look at the data from Africa and the Middle East, and everybody talks about being one team. Everybody talks about collaboration. Everybody talks about being a team. I mean, out of literally, I think it was 6,000 comments in the Middle East and Africa, and part of Asia actually as well, I would say 50% was about that. And then the rest was about fairness, equality, talent development, whatever it was. We themed it to show the client what they need to focus on. And I think, from practical point of view, this is why you need to ask these questions, because otherwise you're actually not creating inclusion. You are doing what you believe is right, but inclusion is all about making sure that I include your perspective, that I include your opinion. And having that allows you to then shape initiatives worldwide that are towards that global direction, but they are targeted differently depending on the country, the region, and even the team. And you mm-hmm. can, when you run surveys, you have the data analysis specifically even towards a team or function of an organization. So I would say start with that. And I love, and it's not always easy because people don't want to go there. And I will tell you why they don't want to go there, because it hurts. It's very personal. Mm-hmm. Start with challenging people's characters and not their skills. Skills they can learn, but it's all about who you are as a human being. And I think that is hard to do because it's very personal. It's not just, you have to improve how you deliver your presentation to the onboarding people or whatever it is. But you actually need to have deep and courageous conversations with people about who they are. Mm-hmm. And that is not easy to do. That is really not easy to do. Mm-hmm. But I also think if you look at, for example, what are the trends from talent and people development worldwide, you see that it's shifting a bit, but you also see that more and more organizations are investing in coaching as tool for people development. And why are they doing that? Because it's very personal and it's very much focused on self. And the change happens because you are the one driving that change and not because somebody told you that you need to change. So if you look at the concept of coaching in organizations and creating, change bottom up, it's the same principle. Yeah. So I would say being very pragmatic about what kind of change needs to happen, what are people telling you, using data to understand that, and then challenge the being and not always the doing, because the right doing comes from the right being.
Absolutely. I love that you're acknowledging that this is not easy. And there's a conversation going on in the sidebar, and I'm really encouraging people to join the spatial chat afterwards to continue this discussion. There's something in here from Dima. Apologies if it's Dima, not Dima. Saying that we can't even agree on the definition of a cucumber. So we are up against it when we're defining inclusivity, when we're defining all of these different things. But I want to go to quite a specific question here. It came in very early, and I have a feeling that it's somebody who holds Dubai close to their heart, because they say, I hear you mentioned hierarchies in Dubai. What opportunities do we have to strengthen a more direct democracy in Dubai companies? And I think maybe not even Dubai, let's talk the Middle East.
It's actually a really good question. And, I to be honest with you, I don't know if I have a full answer for you. I think I can tell you that from working with some of the leaders here, because to be honest with you, most of our business is actually global. We only work with few organizations here. But what I'm noticing, the top leaders of organizations that really want to see that change and that human-centric approach, those leaders are creating more of that, or a part of that whole understanding that it's better to have project-oriented teams rather than functional teams. Yeah. And so even though you see a lot of organizations here, being very functional, finance, HR, operations, commercial, whatever it is, they are building internally those teams to create more of that flat structure. Now, does it work? I can't tell you if it works or not. I can only tell you that we are actually working with a client that is doing a joint venture right now with a local partner. It's an international company and doing a joint venture, and we are helping them on some team effectiveness in the time that they are changing. And I can tell you one thing, that if you are part of an organization that believes in people solving the problems and people being able themselves to solve the problems, it's easier to do that than if you're part of an organization where leaders believe that they've got all the answers. Yeah. So it's very much about what leaders believe as well about you as a human being. So what we're seeing, for example, when we're working with these teams in this joint venture, is that there's a lot of clashes around decision making, because the team that believes they're empowered to take decisions and they know what's right for the organization, they know what's right for the project and to make it profitable, they're ready to take decisions on board. Where people from the other joint venture want to check it with 5 or 10 different people until it goes to another boss. So I think leaders' mindset is extremely important, because you might have an old organization that is very hierarchical, but if you have a leader in that organization, a new leader joining, or leadership that's challenging the hierarchy, I think it's easier then to work on creating more of that engagement and collaboration that it is when leadership doesn't believe that you've got it.
Fantastic. We have only 4 minutes left. The time has flown. And I have just dropped into chat the link to the spatial chat room that we can move on to afterwards for some of these fascinating conversations that are going on. I'd like to ask you, actually, in the last sort of 2 or 3 minutes, what else would you like to say to bring it home, bring this incredible session to a close?
That's a good one. I'm looking at the some of the comments, and I can't read them all while I'm answering the questions. So I've been looking at them while Emma was moderating a bit, and I can looking at you and looking about what this conference is about, and looking at the movement worldwide that is about creating human-centric organizations and creating human-centric designs of organizations. I think, to me, it's important that we don't give up, because I think when you start a movement, very often it feels like you are alone. we are the only organization, I would say, in Dubai that when we talk about inclusion to people here, we talk about people's character. Everybody else talks about unconscious biases and, you know, all the other things, adding diversity, right? It feels lonely. Sometimes it feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels like you're talking about something that people have no idea what you're talking about. They don't understand you. It's a different language. But I think we need to remember that we're not alone, that we are a community globally that's working on something transformational and something impactful. And each one of us plays a role in making it happen. And I, you know, I do believe in the power of collective movement. Some of you are doing things that nobody else knows about, but you are creating impact in the circle where you're in, and you're impacting people that then create more and more of that impact wherever they go. So I guess I just want to encourage us, you know, I'm on that journey. Me and my team, we're on the journey to make the inclusion a little bit more radical than what everybody else is talking about. And it's probably partially what you are doing as well, what you're interested in. And I just want to encourage us to stay on it and believe in it and work towards it, even when tough times come and we want to give up. We question things and wonder if it makes sense, if anybody's even, you know, resonating with it or changing. I think we have a role to play in that change. And even if we don't always see that incredible change, we're impacting the next generation to make the change. So I'm just excited for all of us. And I hope that what I shared with you resonated and inspired you in some way as well. And looking forward to connect with you as well. And I mean, if you have any perspectives or comments or you know, you want to talk more, just add me on LinkedIn, pop me a message. And I think it's important to continue the conversations and be connected worldwide to have that conversation. And I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for joining. Yeah. And Emma, thank you for incredible moderation. Brilliant.
Thank you, Patrycja. We are at the top of the line. There's a bit of conversation going on. Henrik, I'm going to come back to you. I'm really sorry. I cannot see your question in Menti, even though you're saying it's third highest. Much apology for that. I'm going to suggest that we move over now to spatial chat, where people can. I don't know, Patrycja, whether you can join us in that room or not. But we're going to move over there now and let's carry on having some of these fabulous conversations. A million thanks to you, Patrycja, for your time, your energy, your enthusiasm, and your absolute honesty. Absolutely love it. And we'll see some of you in the spatial chat in a moment. I'm going to zoom on over there.
Thank you, everybody. It was an honor to be with you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.